Hey, what's up guys? This is Gary. I'm here today to bring you Hot Boys Garage episode 15. This one's going to be another real steel episode. I'm going to show you my newest rifle, which is a Winchester Model 70 Extreme Weather SS stainless steel, chambered in 300 Win mag. Going to field strip it, clean it, put it back together, and then we're going to slap on a NightForce Picatinny rail with 20 MOA built in, NightForce rings, and a NightForce SHV 4-14x50 f1, which means the reticle is in the first focal plane. After that, we're going to do some shooting. So let's get started. Alright, so first I'm going to show you guys all the stuff that we're going to use for this video. First, there's the rifle, which pretty much this video is all about. It's a Winchester Model 70 Extreme Weather stainless steel, chambered in 300 Winchester Magnum, and it's sitting in a Tipton Ultra gun vise that I'm going to use to hold this guy when I'm working on it. And so right after I run through all this stuff that we're going to use, I'll give you a detailed feature review of the rifle. For cleaning it, we're going to need a lot of stuff. First off is this Tipton 36-inch one-piece cleaning rod. And to go on the end of that, you'll need a cleaning jag as well as brushes. There are a few good manufacturers for these. I prefer either J. Dewey or the Tipton, and I really like the bronze brushes as well. To go on the end of your cleaning jag, you'll need the proper sized cleaning patches, and to keep everything aligned, you'll need a proper sized bore guide, like this one from Possum Hollow Products. Now this particular one is specific to the 300 Winchester Magnum chamber, as well as the newer Winchester Model 70 Action. More stuff you're gonna need for cleaning: some rags. I use old cut up cotton t-shirts, or these blue shop towels work well. If you don't like getting the cleaning solvents all over your hands, decent pair of rubber gloves. An action and chamber tool cleaning set is also a pretty good thing to have around. Some Q-tips or cleaning swabs come in handy as well. Sometimes these guys can leave little cotton fuzzies around in the action or the barrel. If they do, make sure you clean them out, blow them out with compressed air. A decent set of nylon and bronze cleaning brushes, a nice dental pick set, and then of course to round everything out, you'll need your cleaning solvents and gun oil. I like these from Vortec. Another popular one is from Butch's. It's called Butch's Bore Shine. It's a really good cleaning solvent. Over here, the Vortec stuff. This is the oil, copper remover, carbon remover, and then this eliminator is kind of like these two all in one. Carbon and copper remover all in one. All these seem to work really well. I've had good results with all of them. After the cleaning, we're going to go ahead and put a NightForce SHV 4-14x50 f1 scope on this rifle. And we're going to put that on using NightForce's one-piece steel base with 20 MOA built in, and a set of their 30mm ultralight rings. And the height on these is 1 inch, which is also called their medium height. And then to round things off on the scope install, I'm also going to put on a set of these NightForce flip-up scope covers, front and rear. And then to make sure that the scope reticle is level, I'm going to use this reticle leveling system from Wheeler. I used it previously when putting a scope on my AR-15, and it worked pretty well. Another piece that I forgot to mention that will really come in handy for installing a scope base, your scope and scope rings, is a small torque wrench that'll do inch pounds. And when it comes to gunsmithing torque wrenches, you can spend a lot of money, but the one I've been using from Wheeler, this fat wrench, it's like 50 bucks maybe on Amazon. Doesn't break the bank, and it does a pretty good job. And then for bore sighting, I'm going to use this laser bore sighter from Sightmark. It's specific to the 300 Win mag caliber. We're going to give that a shot, see how it works. And then lastly, when we take the rifle out to put some rounds through it, I'm going to use this CTK Precision Gun Rest. Super adjustable, super nice. I got it previously to use an AR-15 video, and I really liked it. Alright, so here we go. To give you guys an overview of this rifle, and again, it is a Winchester Model 70 Extreme Weather stainless steel, chambered in 300 Winchester Magnum, and this guy was purchased in 2020. We'll come on back here and start from the back. These have a really nice Bell & Carlson composite stock. Super rigid, it's rugged, and looks really good in my opinion. Has a built-in rubber buttstock here in the back. Front and rear sling mounts. Coming on up here, it's got the 3-position safety. Obviously, being a Winchester Model 70, it's a bolt action. It's got the pre-1964 extractor claw on it. Everything's stainless. It's got a 26-inch fluted stainless steel barrel. It's got Winchester's MOA trigger system. Pull is pretty light, travels minimal, and it's all adjustable. And the overall length on this guy from front to rear is 46 3/4 inches. And it weighs 7 1/4 pounds without a scope on it. And I think that's just about it. I don't really know what more to say about it. Now, the magazine area holds 3 rounds, feels very well balanced. The MSRPs on this guy at the time that I bought it, which was mid 2020, is $1,379. Obviously, if you shop around, you can get it for a few $100s less. I'd recommend supporting your local gun store. That's where I purchased mine, from Smokin' Musket Outdoors in Bloomery, West Virginia. Great store and great people. Field stripping one of these for cleaning is pretty simple and easy. First thing we're going to do is get the safety in the intermediate position, which is kind of like the middle position. All the way back like this is safe, and intermediate is here in the middle, and then all the way forward is fire. So before removing the bolt, we want to get it into the intermediate position like this. And if your safety didn't want to get there, you may need to lift your bolt and reseat it to cock the firing pin. Once you've got your safety in the intermediate position, lift your bolt up, pull it all the way back. Then once your bolt's all the way back, you can depress this guy and at the same time pull your bolt back. I don't know if I can do this with one hand. Yeah, I can. And it'll slide right out. Now this bolt can be field stripped a little bit further. Before doing so, make sure your safety is in the intermediate or middle position. And then all we're gonna do is with our thumb depress this tab right here. And with that depressed, we're gonna unscrew the back piece of this bolt, which houses the firing pin. We'll pull it out of the bolt. And that process is gonna look something like this. Depress this guy. Start unscrewing, and as you unscrew, you'll have to keep this tab depressed for at least one full revolution for it to clear. And then after the one full revolution, you should be able to unscrew it pretty quickly. It gets between 5 and 10 revolutions total, and it'll be completely free. You should be able to just pull the back piece of the bolt with the firing pin and spring all the way out. And so that is considered field stripping the bolt. And the only other thing we're gonna do to field strip this rifle for cleaning is to depress this button here and support the floor plate so that the floor plate will drop out and we can get up in there and clean the chamber a little bit better from the bottom. So for field stripping, as far as cleaning goes, that's pretty much it. Now if you want to get in and adjust the trigger travel or the trigger pull, I think you need to remove this bolt and the bolt behind the trigger back here. Pull the stock off. We're not going to cover that in this video. So we're going to move on to cleaning. First thing I always like to do is clean the bolt, and to do that, we're going to use some of these swabs, cleaning brush set, trusty cotton cut up t-shirt, and to get it clean, we're going to use some carbon remover, remove all the carbon buildup, and once all the carbon's removed from the bolt, put a light coat of this Vortex friction guard on there. Make sure everything's oiled up nice and good, but not too much, be a light coat. And then so this is pretty cool, directly from the Winchester Model 70 manual, you can see where the lubrication points are on the bolt and in the action. So we'll follow those recommendations. Once you've got your bolt and firing pin, all the carbon removed, and a light coat of oil on, you can reassemble by putting the rear end of the bolt with the firing pin pointed forward, press it in, and screw it in. After about 5 or 6 turns, you'll get to the point where you'll need to depress this pin to screw it on the rest of the way, and you'll screw it in to the point where the bolt assembly looks like this. And again, light coat of oil, and your bolt assembly should be good to go. Next up, we're going to tackle cleaning the chamber and action area of the rifle. Is all in here, the breech, and underneath. Again, I'll use our brushes, swabs, and if need be, this action chamber tool cleaning set. I'll first use our carbon remover, wipe everything down, use the brushes to get any bad carbon buildup off. Once I've got all the carbon removed, put a light coat of oil on, and then we should be good to move forward. Next up, we're going to clean the barrel, and I'd highly recommend using a barrel guide for this. That way the brushes or the cleaning jag don't jack up your chamber. And these newer Winchester Model 70s have this little tang in there. So the barrel guide you get should account for that. The guys from Possum Hollow make this one, and they took and milled it out on the bottom here to account for that. So before we slide our rod in, giggity, we'll put our guide in, make sure it's seated all the way, and then we're ready for some barrel cleaning. Okay, now we've got our one-piece cleaning rod with our cleaning jag for the correct size caliber barrel. Screw it on, take a barrel patch, put it on the end like so, put some cleaning solvent on, and then we'll run the patch down through the barrel. Once you've run the patch all the way down the barrel, remove the patch from the end, and then retract the cleaning rod. Now, in my opinion, it's important to always clean and follow the path of the bullet and never pull a cleaning patch that you've just run down through the barrel or a brush that you just run down through the barrel back up through it. You always want to remove the patch or remove the brush before you retract the cleaning rod. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run another wet patch down through, then I'm going to run a bronze brush down through to break up any stubborn carbon or copper fouling. I'll run another wet patch down through, let it set for a couple of minutes, and then I'll start running dry patches down through. And there's no set amount of times for running brushes or patches down through. You just got to do it until the patches start coming out completely clean. You don't want to see any black, which is carbon fouling, or blue, which is copper fouling, on the patches. Just a side note, if you're using bronze brushes or a bronze cleaning jag, that can show a false positive of blue on the cleaning patches. So take that into consideration. Some guys use nylon brushes to get around that, and or stainless steel cleaning jags. Now I am planning on going and shooting this rifle soon, but if I wasn't and I was gonna put it up for storage, say for quite a few months, after using the solvents to clean everything, I would run a patch with a light coat of just the gun oil, that is this friction guard from Vortec, down through the barrel, just to give it a light coat of oil for storage. After we clean the barrel, it's time to remove the barrel guide. This barrel guide has an O-ring in it to make sure any of the stuff that comes out of the barrel doesn't get back into the chamber. But I like to go ahead and give the chamber another little wipe down up here in the front area anyway. And I'll also clean the muzzle area of the barrel as well. At the very end, I'll take some compressed air, blow out the chamber area, and blow out the barrel, just to make sure everything's clear. Last part is reassembly. Floor plate will go back up in and snap in place like so. Our bolt with the safety in the intermediate position will go back down in like so, lock in place. Now if you want, you can take some gun oil, wipe down the trigger and the outer barrel assembly to make sure everything doesn't rust. Now we're going to install this NightForce SHV 4-14x50 scope on this Winchester Model 70. And to do that, we're going to use this one-piece steel base from NightForce. It's part number A196. This base, as you can see, has 20 minutes of angle of cant built into it already. And that's so that the scope is pointed down a little bit more, just automatically. And for long range rifles and long range scopes, that tends to help put the scope and the turret adjustment more so in its sweet spot. Then we'll also be using these NightForce 30mm ultralight rings. It's the 6 screw and the height is low, and these rings are different from what I showed in the beginning of the video, and there is a little bit of a story behind that. I'll show you a little bit later why I switched to these rings, and these are part number A264 from NightForce. To get all this stuff installed and lined up properly, got a 1/2-inch wrench. We've got our Wheeler Engineering inch-pound torque wrench, a rag and some gun oil, our Wheeler Reticle leveling system, and a few other levels that I have, and this laser bore sighter from Sightmark. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the 4 screws on top here and clean the top of the action really well, and then we'll put a very light coat of oil on top of the action here where the rail is going to mount. Then we'll flip our rail over and do the same thing. We'll clean it really well, and we'll put a light coat of oil on the bottom of it where it mounts as well. Something to note, the NightForce rail does come with different length mounting screws. Some are longer, some are shorter. The longer ones are going to go back here in the back. Shorter ones are going to go in the front. Specifically to my Model 70, I don't know if it's like this for any other rifles, but this front mounting hole here is super shallow. Where the action meets the barrel, there's not much room for a screw to tighten down. None of the screws that came with the rail were short enough, so I chucked this one up in the lathe, cut it down, and then cleaned it up on the bench grinder. It's quite a bit shorter than what it was, and it'll now tighten down nicely in that front hole. Okay, now I've got the one-piece rail mount in place. All 4 screws are in and just snugged up a little bit. One thing I forgot to mention is I usually take my bolt out before doing this, and then once I've got the bolt snugged up just a little bit, not torqued yet, take and put the bolt back in, make sure it slides and moves freely. None of those mounting screws are hanging down far enough to interfere with the bolt. They do, you need shorter ones. Another thing that I should mention is a lot of guys recommend bedding your scope mount rail, and that's especially true if you've got a cheaper rail or a cheaper action. A lot of times mounting surfaces on either one may not be true. The Winchester Model 70 and the NightForce stuff seems to be pretty good. I don't need to bed this one. What I did was I tightened up one side, left screws out of the other, and you can use either a piece of paper or small feeler gauges to see if you've got any gap on the one side. Then you do the same thing for the other side. Take these out, tighten these down. You got gaps over here. Then you'll need to bed the rail to the action. Most guys use epoxy for that. There's plenty of videos on YouTube. If you need to do it, check it out. It's pretty easy, doesn't take much time, and it really helps with consistency and accuracy for your optic and your rifle. So next, I'm going to go ahead and torque these down to 25 inch-pounds. That's what NightForce recommends. Put my bolt back in, check it again, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so the story behind the scope ring situation, I had originally bought NightForce medium height rings from another retailer. They came in medium packaging. They actually measured extra high. I stuck them on the rifle to see how it was going to look, and it was just going to be way too high. Generally, you want your optic to be as close to the barrel as possible without touching it. And I mean, you do need a decent amount of clearance between the bottom of the objective and and the rifle barrel, but you don't want the thing sticking up over an inch off of the rifle barrel. And that's kind of the situation that I had. So that's when I ordered these low 6-screw designs from NightForce, part number A264. They've got the scope sitting quite a bit lower and right about where I wanted it. However, that ran me into a little bit of another problem. The front of the NightForce one-piece steel base Picatinny rail, it hung over the front of the action a little bit too far, and it wouldn't allow me to mount the scope back far enough for a decent eye relief. And one of the drawbacks of the NightForce SHV 4-14x50 is the eye relief isn't the greatest, so you kind of have to mount it pretty far back on the rifle compared to other 50mm objectives. So to cure that, I went a little bit caveman and hacked the front of the rail off. And now it looks kind of like this. I used some spray paint and a little paintbrush, and hopefully if the camera will focus, you can see it doesn't look terrible, and it gives me quite a bit more clearance between the front of the rail and the bottom of the scope's objective whenever I've got the scope mounted where I want it for eye relief. And to cut that rail down, like I said, I just went caveman on it. I used a little Dremel tool with a cut-off wheel. Took my time, went slow, made sure I stayed away from the mating surfaces, and I made sure I didn't get it too hot, so not to warp it when I was cutting it. At the end, I cleaned up the cut itself with this little flap disc, and then this Rust-Oleum automotive primer that I put on with one of my daughter's paintbrushes actually matched the finish of the rail halfway decent. So I wouldn't say I'd recommend doing it, but that's what I did. Okay, our next step is going to be using the Wheeler Engineering Reticle leveling system to first level the rifle side to side at the rail base. And the Wheeler one comes with one level here for the base, but I picked up a bunch of other levels on Amazon because I'm OCD. So we've got all those on there, and I verified that they are all level, and they need to all be perpendicular to the rifle itself. And I've gotten those level with a combination of manipulating the rifle, and I've got it clamped down in the Tipton Ultra gun vise, and then the legs of this Tipton Ultra gun vise are actually adjustable on all four corners. So I've adjusted it to make everything level here. And then once you've got everything level here, you come up to the barrel and you clamp on the other piece of the Wheeler Engineering Reticle leveling system, tighten both of the clamps down, get it somewhat level. Then you can use this adjuster knob to make sure that this bubble here is level, reading perfectly in between. With the reticle leveling system all set up, still got this one on here out at the barrel, and I removed the levels from the rail and put the rings on the rail, mocked everything up, put the rings in the position that made most sense for where the scope's going to be positioned. Over here I got these nuts here just snugged up. We're going to make sure both sides of our rings are nice and clean. We're going to make sure the tubes of the scope are nice and clean. Set it down in and get it positioned. Before you put everything on, definitely make sure that the scope is positioned back to front, up and down, where it's comfortable. You've got plenty of eye relief. You're looking through the scope, and make sure you've got a full field of view back here. You don't want to be so far back from the scope that you've got black ring on the outside of the eyepiece. Once you've got everything positioned where it needs to be, go ahead and double check that your objective is not too close to contacting top of the barrel or your mount, and this one gets fairly close. Put the top half of your rings on, just get the screws started for now, and then we can put our level back up here so we can turn the scope one way or the other, get this guy reading level so that we know that our reticle inside here is level with the gun. I would recommend going ahead and going back to the front level just to make sure it's still reading in the middle and level, in case during your scope install you might have bumped your gun vise or your gun and moved it around a little bit. So now we'll get this guy reading level, and then we'll tighten everything down and we'll give it the eye test, see how it worked. Actually, to back up a little bit, took the top half of the rings off, took the scope out. I think I found a better way to work this reticle leveling system. Installed the rings. NightForce calls for 100 inch-pounds for this 6-screw design for the cross bolts, so I torqued those down to 100 inch-pounds. Obviously got everything where I need it to be. And I've got this very accurate machinist level here. I think I got it at Shar's. I stuck this thing up here so it's sitting flat on the scope rings, and then I manipulated the rifle and the vise, get this reading level. I adjusted that guy up there to get it reading level. So now pull this back off, sit the scope down in, get it positioned where I want, front to back. Put this level back up on top here on a flat spot of the scope where it is perpendicular with the rifle. Twisted it around where this guy's reading level. Put our scope rings back on, torque those down to 25 inch-pounds. That way we know our reticle's level. Okay, the scope's installed. installed, reticle's leveled, top rings are on, everything's torqued down. Again, for this 6 screw design, NightForce recommends 25 inch-pounds. So we use this guy to get there. I went in steps, did 10, then 17, then 25, crisscross pattern. Picked it up and the eye test says everything looks good. Might be a good time to go ahead and talk about lapping scope rings, which I probably should have talked about this before. But with these NightForce rings used with their rail system, they do not recommend lapping the scope rings. And I think it actually voids their warranty, depending on what kind of scope rings you've got. You may need to do it. There's a lot of YouTube videos on it. Pretty much the purpose is to align the scope rings and get everything nice and concentric inside, pretty much sand them down so that the rings make more contact with the scope tube and everything's aligned and it doesn't get all janky and you end up crushing the scope tube. For this application, we didn't need to worry about it. Now I'm going to focus the reticle, and on a NightForce scope, that is done with the reticle focusing ring back here on the rear of the eyepiece. And so what I'll usually do is put the scope on its highest power. For this one, it's 14. Usually screw the focuser, or I think it's called a dioptric or something like that, in all the way. Put the rifle up and focus it on a light plain colored background. In this case, it's going to be this back wall. And I'll come over here and set the Parralax on infinity, which is that little guy right there. And then I'll look through the reticle and make adjustments with this guy until the reticle is in focus. So it's important to look through the scope at the reticle for only a few seconds at a time. Then you need to take your head away, let your eyes refocus, and then put your head back down and look at the reticle again. And the reasoning for that is because even if the reticle is out of focus within the scope, the longer your eye is there looking at the reticle, it'll try and focus it for you. Your eyes will try and focus it for you. And you don't really want to do that. You want to use this guy to focus the reticle so that your eye's not strained, you get it set appropriately. Moving on, I'm going to install the objective flip-up cover from NightForce. Comes in 2 pieces. This first piece is going to screw on to the objective, like so. Then on the outside of this, it's got a little ridge, and on the inside of this plastic cover, it's got some retaining ridges. We're just going to snap it on like this, and there it is, popped on and installed. Get it open. Good to go. Fit and finish is just okay for these. And it's kind of wonky and difficult to get closed. I actually have some Butler Creek ones on other scopes. Kind of like their fit and finish a little bit better. Now for the eyepiece scope cover, this one is kind of sort of one piece. It just slips over the eyepiece like this, and then you use that screw right down there on the bottom to tighten it up snug on the eyepiece. Okay, there's the eyepiece flip-up cover installed. Again, fit and finish isn't the greatest, not what I would expect from NightForce. Still prefer the Butler Creek stuff over this, but it'll work. Now I'm going to attempt to bore sight this thing with the laser bore sighter from Sightmark. It's not the greatest or most accurate way to do it, but I'm hoping it'll get me close enough to be on the paper. And in my house where I live, I'm only able to do this back to about 35 yards. So the bore sight will take place 35 yards. In order to do that, I'll need to use the elevation adjustment here, and I'll need to use the windage adjustment here on the side to get to that and screw the cap. You adjust it by turning this turret. Over here on the other side, I've already talked a little bit about the Parralax. It's this inner dial here, and that's used to focus the image inside the scope. And then this outer dial on the SHV 4-14x50 is, I think, 11 different settings for illuminating the reticle inside for low light conditions. So there's numbers 1 through 11 here. So yeah, it is 11 settings. And in between each number, there is an off setting as well. So it'll be like 1 off, 2 off, 3 off, so on. Another cool feature about this scope is it's got what NightForce calls their ZeroSet. And what that allows you to do is once you go to the range and you zero sight in your rifle at, say, 100 yards is what most people use, 100 meters. Once you've got it sighted in, you can then zero your elevation turret, and you do that by loosening 2 Allen caps here, and there's one just like this on the other side. Loosen those up, and then you take your turret, spin it around to where the zero is back here at the back at the center hash mark on the scope body, and you push it all the way down, and then you retighten both of these set screws. And definitely use a torque wrench whenever you do this. The torque setting for those little screws is 4 inch-pounds. You don't want to over tighten that and strip it out. Likewise, for windage adjustment, you can zero it as well. What you do is you hold the turret itself with your fingers, use a coin to unscrew the screw holding it on while you hold on to the turret itself. Once this is screwed all the way out, you take it off, pull the turret completely off, align it to where the zero is aligned with the hash mark, the center hash mark back here on the scope body, press it all the way on, and then screw this back in. And that's how you can zero the windage adjustment. And then other than the reticle focus back here and increasing and decreasing the scope power here, I think that's pretty much it for the NightForce SHV 4-14x50 f1 scope. Now all that's left to do is we're going to take it up, shoot it, going to attempt to break in the barrel, as well less sight in the scope and get it zeroed at 100 yards. Okay, here at our land to sight this thing in, got an old workmate bench, and I've got the CTK precision gun rest, and I'm shooting off of, very adjustable. Attempting to zero this at 100 yards. One down in the woods, at exactly 100 yards via rangefinder. And over here, got another station that I was going to use to clean the gun in between rounds to break in the barrel, since this is a brand new gun, but I forgot my cleaning rod. So if you go to the range, want to break in your barrel, want to clean it, don't forget your cleaning rod. So since I can't clean it in between rounds, I only shot it twice today. Have to make another trip back up, fully sight it in, and break in the barrel. Okay, so that's it for this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it, learned something. The pro tip to take away from this episode is if you're taking your rifle to the range to break in the barrel, you definitely need to take your cleaning rod. Anyways, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends and family about it, and stay tuned for more content. In between episodes, you can follow me on social media at Hott Boys Racing with 2 T's on Instagram and Hott Boys Racing on Facebook for our ATV drag racing page. I'll stick links to both of those in the video description. Thanks for watching.